Well, good afternoon, good day. We're back at Pacific View Memorial Park. This is video number 3. I'm going to cover the tragic death of journalist reporter Ruben Salazar. We're outside of Lagunita Court. This is take number 3. I really need a professional cameraman, or at least somebody who can hold the camera while I'm doing this. This gets exhausting, doing take after take. Anyway, Ruben Salazar. He was born March 3rd, 1928, in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. He and his family moved to the United States. Shortly thereafter, he became a naturalized U.S. citizen. In 1947, he served 2 years in the U.S. Army. This is his little niche right here. He worked for the now defunct El Paso Herald-Post. At one point, he posed as a vagrant to get arrested while he investigated the poor treatment of prisoners in the El Paso jail. He also worked at several California newspapers. He then, in 1959, became a news reporter and columnist for the Los Angeles Times. He became a most prominent figure within the Chicano movement. If you don't know what that is, it started sometime in the early 60s, maybe even before. The Chicanos were concerned with Hispanic civil and political rights, and they were very anti-assimilation. So he covered stories about them. He also traveled overseas. He covered the U.S. occupation of the Dominican Republic in 1965. He went to Vietnam, covered the Vietnam War. He also went to Mexico City in 1968 and covered the Tlatelolco massacre. That's an Indian name, the Tlatelolco massacre, in which 1968 some 300 to 400 people were shot dead by Mexican troops during a protest. I remember Laura telling me about this protest. She was a little girl at the time, but they remember it well over there. He returned to the United States in 1968. He focused on the Mexican-American community, especially in East Los Angeles. He covered the student walkout from the East Los Angeles School District in 1968. He then left the LA Times and became news director of the Spanish language TV KMEX, which is now Channel 34. During his time, he essentially made the transition from journalist to activist, which technically reporters are not supposed to do. We all know they do it, though. Whether you're on the right or the left, reporters often become activists. Because of his support of the Chicano movement, he became an FBI target and was the subject of an FBI internal file. That shouldn't surprise anyone, knowing the way J. Edgar Hoover spied on U.S. citizens. Incidentally, Mr. Salazar said that he was certain there were LAPD police officers that were following him around and spying on him too, and I believe that because I've read some things about the LAPD spy network at that time. It was very elaborate. You can get any book by Mike Rothmiller, who used to work at the LAPD. He'll tell you about that. Anyway, he was, because of his sympathy with the Chicano movement, he was viewed as a communist, or at least a communist sympathizer. He was warned by Chief Davis of the LAPD to be careful because his content was very divisive. Of course, Salazar didn't listen. So on the day of his death, in August 29th, 1970, just 3.5 months after the Kent State University shooting, he was covering the National Chicano Moratorium March, which was in East Los Angeles to protest the Vietnam War. During his coverage, he took a break, went into the Silver Dollar Bar, and Los Angeles Sheriff's deputies stormed the bar. Deputy Tom Wilson fired a tear gas canister into the bar, supposedly to flush out thieves. But the canister hit Mr. Salazar in the head and killed him right away. Of course, there was a huge uproar in 1970. People today still remember this. There's a whole park over in Los Angeles named after Ruben Salazar. Did Deputy Wilson kill him deliberately? Or was it an accident? Deputy Wilson says it was an accident. He didn't mean to hit Salazar. He was just firing the tear gas canister to flush out thieves, which were reported to be in the area. After several days of testimony, a coroner's jury returned with a split verdict. No charges were ever filed by the district attorney. 3 years later, Los Angeles County settled with the family for $700,000, which they gave the Salazar family. But that's 42 years of age. He met his end doing his job. It was tragic. Of course, these things are always tragic, and perfect justice in this world is not possible. One day, we will live in a world of perfect justice. There is a world of perfect justice already on the other side of the veil of death, but one day that world, with the return of Jesus Christ to earth, will be here, and we will know perfect justice. But until then, we basically have to count on the justice in the courts of man, which is quite often imperfect. Rest in peace, Mr. Salazar. I'm sad that he died the way he did. But God is alive, and our hope is in God. Our hope is not in the courts and justice of man.